If you want to unlock meaning as you're reading a book of Scripture, it is vital to dig into and understand better who the original audience was and what they were going through. And this is especially true of all the biblical letters. The New Testament epistles is the fancy word. And I'm talking about books like Romans and Corinthians and Galatians and Ephesians, all those sorts of books. And what you may not know, not a single one of those is written to you. None of them were interested in answering the question of how do I get my soul, my American soul in the 21st century, how do I make sure that I go to heaven when I die? That's not what they were talking about. They're written to churches, almost all of whom were in the middle of some kind of crisis. So you want to do the spade work, and maybe a Come Alive book will help you do that. You want to do the spade work of finding out, well, what was going on in the life of the church receiving this letter. And just a real easy example is the Galatian churches. They were messed up. They had become vulnerable to the influence of outside false teachers who were telling them that they had to become Jewish before they could become Christian. And Paul comes along and he's really quite agitated in his language, and he actually says, "You foolish Galatians, who has bewitched you?" And if you just open up the Bible randomly and you don't know what's going on, what the story behind the story is, you'll be like, what in the world is that about? But when you understand what it is about, then your appreciation for God's beautiful truth of salvation by grace through faith becomes that much more evident in your life. I had such a moment of triumph with my young adult life group recently because I try to get them to understand and remember what's going on in the biblical books that we have studied and looked at. And I always want them to know that the biblical letters, the New Testament epistles, are driven by occasions. They're written for some people, but they're also written against others, usually against false teachers. And so I asked my young adult life group, I said, now what was going on in 1 Corinthians again that made Paul write it in the first place? And one young woman popped up and she said, is that the one where the guy was having an affair with his stepmother? And I was like, bingo, that's exactly what drives and what is the occasion behind the writing of 1 Corinthians. The Bible's so much more fun when you actually read it for yourself other than hearing what other people tell you it's about. And that is the crisis that makes 1 Corinthians become written. A guy is having an affair with his stepmother, and the Corinthian church is walking around with their chins up in the air saying, look at us, look how spiritual we are. The Bible is so much more fun when you actually read it and you know the story behind the story and all the ways that intersects with your life and mine. I'm super excited that the first Come Alive book is about the Gospel of Matthew, and just a couple of things that people need to know about Matthew as you begin to open it up is the opening words. Matthew begins with a trip through Jesus's family graveyard. Its first chapter is a genealogy, and all these begats and whomever, and who in the world would begin a biography with a genealogy? To us, it seems so boring. But guess what? Matthew wasn't written to us. It was preserved for us. It was written to first century Jews who had come to believe in Jesus. And when they saw that genealogy, they were absolutely riveted. And they noticed that Matthew goes to great lengths to include not only women in the genealogy, and that's unusual, but women of questionable character and of a different national origin than the Jews. Women like Ruth and women like Rahab. Rahab the what? Oh, the harlot. And so Matthew is shouting out from the opening words of his gospel, the Messiah is not for the elite. He's for everyone, to the Jew first, and then to the Gentile.